Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the lecture so far. As far as a tutorial on a Gantt chart, I just wanted to break down how to actually produce that in Microsoft Excel. So this will be a relatively quick tutorial, but I'll kind of document a manual process for approaching a Gantt chart. So looking at this, what you would do, essentially it will outline our tasks. So I'll just call this task 1. So assuming that it's a known problem, you define your tasks. So we'll just call this task 2, and we'll call this task 3. One real fun trick about Excel, when you highlight it, there's this little box in the corner. When you drag that down, we'll drag down for 10 tasks. It automatically does that. So once it kind of recognizes a pattern, so you can't just do one and then pull it down, because it'll just say they'll all say task 1. But once it recognizes a pattern, Excel is smart enough to be able to say, okay, I know how to interpret this. And then, normally you would be very, very specific, saying your specific month and your specific week. But we'll just say we'll be very generic in this case. So we'll call this week 1, week 2, and week 3. And we'll do the same thing. So we'll highlight those 3 cells. We'll grab the little corner. In this case, we'll bring it over and say, we anticipate already that this is going to take 13 weeks. We'll call that good. And then from there, it's all about formatting from that point. So what you can do is grab your little format bar. You throw in your edge lines from there. So, and you can call this, we'll say task 1 is going to happen over the first 2 weeks. Call that in yellow. And we'll say that all task 1 through 5 are, the same general process, so they'll all be yellow. We'll say that task 2 depends on task 1 to be completed before it's initiated. We'll say that task 3 can start after task 1, but at the same time as task 2. We'll say that task 4 is dependent. In this case, it's going to take that time. And then perhaps we'll say that task 5, just as a realistic example, actually won't get started until week 9, and it'll conclude at the end of week 11. So there's a little bit of a gap. But that gap is in place because of the second set of tasks. So in this case, we'll say that this belongs to a separate project, but they're going to intertwine in week 7. So we'll call this blue. We'll make it a little bit lighter so you can read it. And say that this task actually is going to begin at the end of task 4 in the previous process. And it's going to take 3 weeks to complete. So you can see now we have overlap between the two in week 9 again. This is going to get started here, so it's not a full dependency. This one's dependent on that. And then these last 2 are going to be concluded in week 13. So in essence, that's a Gantt chart that documents 10 tasks. These tasks, 5 of which are associated with separate processes. So task 1 through 5 is a process. Task 6 through 10 is a separate process. You can see what gets started in week 1, where certain things are overlapping. This has a prerequisite requirement before it can get started. Those types of things, and you can see where things start and where things end. Now, if you want to fancy it up, you can turn your text a little bit. You can angle it. So now we're a little bit fancier and say what's happening when. You can say, when you're looking at it over here, we can name a point person. So we'll call this responsible party. So that responsible party will say, I'm responsible for task 1 and task 2. You are responsible for, everything else. I'll just say you all the way down. So you can kind of define, who's doing what, who's responsible for what, and kind of outline what that looks like. You can name it, up top if you want to name it. We'll just say we're going to insert a column or insert a row rather in here. We can name it, merge our cells. In this case, so we'll merge cells, and then I'll say this is, project radiation protection, whatever that radiation protection initiative really looks like. So, there's all kinds of things once you get into the format about making it look better, but, in essence, this is a kind of a general flow, so you have an idea of what a Gantt chart really looks like, and then can kind of go from there. So we'll say that this responsible party really doesn't need to be angled like that, but so you can take that off, and you can say, okay, I didn't really want that. I want it really just to be straight. Take it off, and there we go. So lots of different ways to kind of break down this information. Hopefully you found this information to be helpful. If you have any questions about the setting up of a Gantt chart, certainly let me know. But otherwise, make sure you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.